Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer, and this sounds almost hard for me to believe when I realized it, but this is going to be episode number 14 of The Human Game. Sonia Barrett is here with me, and we started The Human Game, I think, the second time we did a show together. So it's actually our 15th show together. I've known you for about 4 years or so now, but I feel like I've been friends with you my whole life, and it's always lovely to get to spend the morning with you. Sonia Barrett, welcome back. How are you?
Oh, thank you so much. It's always great chatting with you. It's always a great experience. I love it because you're always so light and open. And I mean, that's what's required right now, being open and light as much as possible. So, yeah.
So it's interesting you say that. This is not where I plan to start, but there's actually been, I'm obsessed with the tennis, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I am, there's been this campaign during the US Open that has all of the stars talking about how important it is to be open, right? And of course, they're talking about, acceptance of everybody and everything and blah, blah, blah. And it's one of these things that it's okay, so it's both true and not true, right? They are hijacking this moment because of what you just said, right? In order to move through this moment that we are in right now, one has got to be open, and you've got to be light and whatnot, right? And then they do that, but then they overlay the whole, social programming, mental health, all that stuff construct over it. But just the fact that they're using that as their sort of campaign lets you know, that's the kernel of truth in it, that is actually what is required right now. But it's up to the individual to figure out what that really means, not what they're telling you it means, right? So I like that you started with that. It's totally necessary.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that you're absolutely right, but I think that it started with priming people with this oneness idea, because then there is oneness, which I've talked about. There's oneness, and then there's this other oneness, that they kind of started up with. This a number of years back, and because I've written about it as well, and there's articles on it on the website on that idea, because there's the idea of we're all one. And now you see how that idea, like you said, to some degree, when they're saying being open and all of this, you see how you don't do it for others. So we get sold this whole concept of being responsible for other people based on all of this idea of we are one, we have to work together. So they always use what really is, and they sort of hijack it into something else. And so people's minds have been primed. This moment is not really sudden. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because people have been primed for it all along, gradually. And I remember when I interviewed oh my gosh, what's his name that did the book? He was a economic hitman.
I know you're talking about Perkins.
Yeah, because I was one of the first people that really interviewed him years ago. And so I remember when, in the back of the book, and when he was talking, he's saying, well, the best thing that people can do right now is to just get together, find communities, and just start working with each other in these groups. Okay, well, that sounded good, but what I heard was something else. What I heard was something completely different, which is what I'm seeing now, which is this one mind concept, in a way, this Borg mind, which we're seeing also with schools, with competition. It's oh, well, we don't want to do that. It's this whole sameness thing. Some companies are doing. You got to be a team player, which means your mind. Team player in one way is good, but then there's the team player where it's this sort of Borg mind, one mind kind of concept. So it's really tricky. People just have to have their eyes open to really be able to see that there's layers to anything that they're saying. There's always multiple layers.
So a couple of things that always little nuggets start to be thrown right from the very beginning with you. And what we're going to do a bit later, a little bit later is, you have a workshop coming up that I think is incredibly timely and could be really interesting for people. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what you're going to be doing and maybe sort of demonstrate an iteration of some of those ideas. But before that, I just wanted to catch up with you a little bit. And a couple of things you said in the first that, I want to kind of hear from you sort of what you think this moment is. Like we're recording this on Friday morning. Today is September 10th. Right. Of course, there's a historical anniversary coming up tomorrow, and we see all of the usual sort of shenanigans and twilight behavior and language that we normally see about that. But also, we just even in the last 24 hours, there is this, sort of theoretical hammer sort of coming down,
Right.
or appearing to come down, that I think has people who obviously there's lots of people in our community who've been looking at this stuff for a long time,
Right.
but even people who have been fairly sleepy for most of their life, like going, huh, and really starting to feel it. So I'd like to kind of hear from you, the masterful gameplay game designer, what you see this moment as. Like, I know that there's a lot of people who look at this moment only from fear, and then there's a lot of people who are, who subscribe to that caca oneness that you were talking about, that, kind of don't have any respect for what might be the gravity of the moment. What is this moment?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many levels of this. You're right. There are people that ascribe to fear, and then there are people that turn it into, we're going through our ascension. I mean, it's just all kind of assortment of things that are going on here. But ultimately, in the end, everything that's going on here right now is definitely a propulsion. It is definitely a push. It is definitely for people to choose a side. It's like, in a way, you're choosing a side, but it doesn't necessarily mean, I don't mean choose a political side. That's not what I'm talking about. It's a push for you to decide where you want to be. Do you want to go auto? Do you want to keep going on that treadmill where somebody else is making those decisions and choices for you? I'm talking about spiritually, for lack of another word. I'm going to use that, or with your consciousness, how your consciousness expands, how your awareness expands. Do you want to do that, or do you want to take the responsibility to actually move yourself forward? So I think that, to me, is ultimately the core of what's going on. On the other hand, now, if we look at it from just a 3D standpoint, I think that the push is certainly on because there is a deadline. They have these deadlines that they need to meet for the construct, for the new system in place, this new ordered world, or this new world order that we've been hearing about forever, that this is really it. We're in the midst of it. And so they have deadlines to meet in terms of how, people and assimilating people, or people assimilating into whatever that new system and construct is for our minds, our brains, our bodies. And so this is why that push is definitely happening from that standpoint. And I think people need to realize that we operate based on cycles, which we've talked about a number of times. We operate based on cycles. The whole system, the whole cosmic system operates on cycles. The earth has its own cycles. Human beings, their bodies have its own cycles. And then you have the matrix. You have the governing systems that are operating based on their own cycles. And so you've got the New World Order that had been in effect, or been planning, been preparing all along for this moment. Now we're in the age where technology has blossomed, has bloomed enough to initiate some of the things that they couldn't before. So here we are. So you've got all these new insertions in terms of tracking people, getting enough people in the database, because it's data mining. It's a lot of collecting information. And the reason for collecting that information on all of these people, on everybody, is because of what needs to happen ultimately in a few years with having what should I say, having listed or having documentation then of all the people that are in the system, because of the technological effect that it's going to have on human beings, and where we're being taken, where humans are being taken. It's a much bigger picture as far as technology is concerned. There's technology here, the basic technology that we're looking at, and then there's the bigger technology of the system, and of course of these secret societies and those that they report to. So it's a massive thing, but it doesn't mean that one has to approach it in fear. It's always been like this. Before we even got onto the planet, there's been a war, there's been different factions, and people need to understand that there've been different factions. Just because we're here in a body, it doesn't mean that those things still aren't occurring. However, it is up to certain individuals who are here, and maybe that's part of their journey, to expand, to hack the game, to go beyond what things appear to be right now. Or you can decide to go ahead and stay in the fear construct that is being created, which means that those people are going to be completely under the thumb of those who are designing all of these things that we're hearing about right now. So I don't know if that gives like some insight.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So a couple of things. So, obviously sort of in the last 24 hours, we had our weekend at Bernie's leader in chief, right? Basically like come out and with like all of the force of, an 80-year-old man who's about to keel over, right? Lay down the tyrannical, well, they used to call them dictates, but now they just call them mandates, and people don't seem to understand the difference, right?
I mean, yeah.
Basically that like, everybody who works for the government needs to get poked, and any company, he's going to have OSHA make a rule that any company with more than 100 workers either has to poke them one way or poke them the other way, on a regular basis. Or they're going to be fined $14,000, which I thought was kind of an interesting number.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's the 3D the 3D actions that are taking place. Yeah. Right. Well, I didn't want to interrupt you. You were
okay. Let's say it was the 14,000. We're on human game number 14, and it's a $14,000 fine. I don't know. Right. Yeah. But yeah. But so on the so I see. There's lawsuits launched already about this, or people are saying, governors are opposing it. And then I'm like, wait, and this is in no way me, basically, providing cover for, tyrannical actions, but I'm like, wait a second. The rule is for companies that have
over 100 people.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that everybody in our community has complained about for years and years and years has been the death of mom and pop businesses, have been, like not liking shopping at places like Walmart or Amazon or whatever. So in some ways, like a way to look at this, to sort of extend to sort of energize yourself for extended play, because that's what this game is about. The game is to go on and on and on. Like if the game is over, that's not fun, right?
Right.
But one of the ways to look at this is like, there's going to be, like you said, there's going to be a dividing line, and it's not us versus them or political parties or whatever. It's like, am I interested in, like global corporate way of life? Or am I interested in a human to human local interaction? And not that there can't be any internationalism or travel or connection with people of other cultures, but like this actually provides the kick in the pants that most people maybe need to stop supporting that system, which they've said for a long time that they don't like, and go to that space of mom and pop, local, know your farmer, know your butcher, know your this and that, all that kind of stuff, and it's almost like makes it easier, right? Like you
Yeah.
go to those places, you know, they're on your side. The other places, they're not. There's not even like any, and when I say your side, I don't mean in this, like, you're bad, I'm good. That's not what I mean.
Right. Mhm.
But like, there's a split happening in civilization, right? There's the like, there's the streamlining of one kind of technology with another kind, right? So we, you know, you and I've talked at length for many years now about this is a certain kind of technology. It's sort of a spiritual, biological technology that has the ability to interface with that, both that which is sort of, you know, organic or natural, and that which is more mechanized and controlled or whatever. And, you know, like, let's say both of those things are railroad tracks, and this is the opportunity for you to sort of, you know, hop on the car that you want to go. There's a split, like with the subway splits to go to two different neighborhoods and whatnot, right? It's just that opportunity that's sort of clear. We've all talked about it for a long time, but everybody, including myself, and I'm sure yourself upon occasion and whatever, falls back on the convenience of Amazon, of this, of that, or whatever it is. And this is just a chance to be like, you know what? Like, no, like, I am done with this.
Yeah.
Right? This is not, you know, this does not further the reality that I'm interested in subscribing to. And so, like, here's the endpoint. And it almost like it forced a move. It's forcing a move that people need to make. So what are your kind of thoughts about that on the various levels, right? Like, there's obviously a 3D level to this, but there's also a level to this that is just more
right. And it is a responsibility factor. It is a personal responsibility factor, and I think that's the kick in the pants. Ultimately, this is the kick in the pants, is the personal responsibility. And no matter what level we're dealing with, is can you bring this home to self, in terms of what is right for you, what works for you. And I do agree with being able to go to maybe the mom and pop store. Again, that still comes back to your personal responsibility. And I think we've also people have been conditioned to feel security with these bigger names, you know, like the banks or whatever. You feel more secure because that's the name that's been etched in your mind forever, because they're so big and they got signs everywhere and whatever, and we're programmed. So there is that factor. And even as far as our food is concerned, yeah, I do shop more in terms of produce, those things at the farmer's market. Yes, because you get to know the grower, you know who you're dealing with, being able to take. But if a person has never been interested in their health or interested in where their food comes from, but all they want to do is sit around and listen to conspiracy theories or that are not necessarily theory, or listen to what's going on, with UFOs and discoveries, which is all fine. But some people, honestly, that's all they want to do, and it makes them feel like they're doing something. What we're talking about right now is getting up and actually tuning in and connecting with yourself. It's just like waking up, going, whoa, and making some decisions as to how you're going to operate, how you're going to function. We are being forced to do that. I was on a show the other day where they asked sort of a similar question. And for me, I had made the decision that I was going to not shop at any place that harassed me. I just was not. I would rather drive an hour and a half away once a week to a store that I know to go and shop. So for me, that was the thing. That was the decision. It's like, okay, well, this is what I have to do. Then I don't look at it as, oh my God, it's too far. We have to start determining what is an inconvenience to us, because that's even programmed into us as to what is inconvenient, because they have programmed us by simply giving us supposed conveniences. So these supposed conveniences we are now addicted to as our normal. So anything that takes us a little bit out of our way, kind of like the parking spot not close enough to the door, and now there's a problem. You don't want to park further away, I should say, to walk. So it's really stopping and looking at who you are at this time, who you've been, the road you've traveled. Here I am. We have choices that we can make. And until we starve the system out, whether it be restaurants or, whatever these places are that you like to frequent, we have to stop. We have to say no. And that is a personal right, personal decision. So, talking to other people, not recently, but having talked to some big name people who say, well, I don't like it, but, I saddle up and go into whatever that particular zone is or store. And we have to realize that's how we take back control, though, is just really evaluating how important something is in this moment, because there are going to be times when there's something that you just can't really get around, but it's life and death, or it's super important. So you're going to have to engage with the system in a way that you are not okay with, but you save that for emergency. You don't just jump on, this. That's how the system is doing what it's doing, because there's enough people agreeing and acquiescing to it. So that's the personal responsibility part. That's the growth that we're talking about. That's the expansion. It's not just, I just want to be, spiritual. I want to hear all this stuff. No, this is a moment of taking action to begin to build being this master that we really all are, that the system has worked at projecting and broadcasting information to us, our parents, generations back, and moving forward, projected the kind of data that has kept us in this narrow and trapped mindset. So that's what I have to say about that. You got to decide. I already know what I'm doing. So each person has to decide. No place is like too far for the certain things that I have to do. Obviously, I can't walk or drive to England, but I don't really need to go to England right now. I don't need to go on vacation right now to a place where I'm going to go there and do the same thing I'm doing here. To me, those are the evaluations that I make for myself.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, one of the things we need to not do in response to this, it's different. It's a different calculation for everybody, right?
Right.
How they decide like where their line is, what the criteria for that is, how they, whatever, it's different for every person. And the system, right? The system likes homogeneity and uniformity, and there to be like one rule for all except for them anyway, or whatever, right? But they like that uniformity, and we have to be careful in our response to that, not to also do uniformity, because even if it's a uniformity that isn't their favorite kind, they like the idea of uniformity, and they know that if they can get a group to sort of all act as one, like move like a flock of birds or a school of fish or whatever.
Yeah, the Borg.
Right, the Borg, right? And so it's for me, like my assessment of like what the game board is and how I'm going to play kind of changes every day, right? And it's much deeper than like, I will do this, I won't do this.
It's according to what exactly.
Right.
It's according to what you need and that line you draw.
What I need, but also like really looking at the other players on the board, right? And why, like what they're doing, and determining, sometimes you can't, but like determining, if you can, why they're doing what they're doing. What is the intent behind what they're doing?
Right.
What is their base level? Are they acting from a place of fear, or are they acting from a place of just going along to get along? Are they acting from a place of like authoritarianism and loving the bossing people around? Like you see some people out there, you see some little old people or whatever who just actually look like they're really scared, right?
Right.
And the response to them is completely different than to like those bossy people who just want to tell everybody what to do. Why aren't you wearing your mask? And whatever, all that kind of shit, right? Like,
right.
This requires a refinement of our own minds and our own intuition and our own ability to sort of,
discern in the moment
quickly, like how you want to play this round or play this hand, right? And it's been an interesting sort of way to sort of work on narrowing down the amount of contradictions within your own like the rules for your own game.
Like, who are you? I mean, I think ultimately in the end, that's what you're asking yourself.
Yeah.
Who am I? Because that answer is going to be, it's going to give you a printout of exactly how you think, what your belief system is. And you're going to see that by your response, your reaction to any and everything and everyone. You can't help but see that. So that's a question that we need to ask anyway. You know, who am I? Where, you know, is there, I always say, is there an authentic version of me? Or am I just a compilation of a lot of data that that's been, you know, downloaded into me, you know, from I got here? And then of course there's the data you already come with in your genes, DNA that you brought in from your bloodline and so on. So I think that is important question to ask. It's not complicated. Who am I? And then can you give yourself an honest answer? Can you sit with that and just honestly see that? Because people like to defend who they are. They like to defend their behavior. They like to defend it so that they don't have to maybe make changes, or sometimes it's too much to see the truth. So, you know, and this is what I'm saying, this is not about chastising anybody. I'm just saying that's the brutal honesty that we all have to do for ourselves. And what you were saying about this, you know, wanting everybody to operate the same way, again, it's the new order. It's order. That's what it is. The new order. There's order. Is so different definitions of order is what's ordered up, and it's the order that has been is now designed, constructed for people. And they know that there's going to be a portion of people that aren't going to willingly fall in line, but they just need a certain number of people. Everything is pretty ritualistic, you know, it's always so much deeper than we think. So they just need a certain number of people for the for the circle to be complete, for whatever that cycle is and that roadmap to be complete. And then they will stop. Then there's a point where this will stop. So this is not going to go on like this forever. However, we must realize that we've had more than, what is it, almost a couple of years of being conditioned. You know, again, it's the habit, right? It takes, they always say 2 weeks, 14 days, whatever, to form a habit. You've had way over 500 days to form habits that you don't even know that you formed. Mm-hmm. But the system knew that you would form these particular habits. And a habit is also in a thinking, in a mindset, in a belief, in all of these things. So we form these habits that we're not even going to notice because it's now normal. So, and it's subtle. It's the delivery of this new order, these new behaviors. It's very subtle, and certainly everybody is going to be changed, some more than others. And that's all that is needed moving forward. So we wear the symbol, we wear a political statement, we wear a symbol that is embedded with what that program, what that new order is about. It's amazing. You can take a bracelet, you know, and if we all start wearing the same bracelet, and it says the same thing, and we're all wearing it, well, that symbol is there, and we're taking it in. We're taking it in. So this is what we're looking at right now. And for, you know, we just have to hold out long enough, because it cannot go on for lots of reasons, economic reasons, and all kinds of other reasons. They just need for you to think that it's going to go on for a long time, and that you don't have a choice, but we do have some choices.
So, you know, I agree with you. So, like, you know, I have a lot of clients and listeners and friends who are like very concerned, and, you know, some on the edge of like freaking out, right? You know, about stuff. And my thing has just been like, hold your position, right?
Yeah.
Like the system absolutely reserves the right to trick as many people as they can into doing what they want them to do by making them think that this is like a thing that's going to go on forever, or the final word on something, like, right? And they have like, that like
They have to do it that way though.
to do it.
Yeah.
And also, just like anything else, right? Just like, I mean, and this is why in every fairy tale or every story we've ever been told, there's always the character that's stubborn, right? Right? Like sometimes you just have to hold your position and deal with momentary, or for days, weeks, sometimes even months, discomforts or going without certain things. But eventually the system will reorient itself around you. If it can't put you into to sort of changing yourself to fit into it, it will have to be. You see this like in nature, right? Like,
that's right.
The trees will move itself around, or whatever, right? Like the things will start to bend and mold to you. If you're like, yeah, like, you know what, I'm generally flexible, but on this one, no, I'm staying here, and everything can sort of reorient itself around me, because we actually are. And I know some people love when I say this and some people hate this. We are the center of the universe. That was the first lie I ever was when our parents told us, you think the world revolves around you? Like the answer was actually,
and it does, yeah. I've done that in workshops where I've said that. I'm like, yeah, it does. The world does revolve around you, because you're the one that's allowing and creating and projecting and doing what you're doing. But you're right. The reassessing, people have, that's the word I should have used earlier, but we have to reassess what's important in our lives. We have to reassess what's convenient, what's really inconvenient. We have to really reassess. I mean, and that, for me, that's what I've done. Now let's make sure that we take this part out of it too. Now, when I say the things that I say about what I'm doing and my approach, understand that I'm not angry. I am not mad. Well, in the very beginning, I was definitely irritated. And I still am irritated. However, I will not allow this construct to suck my energy, to take from me, because I am so angry that it ends up affecting my body and my being. That's something that we have to look at. Now, as you said, Emily, when you hold your position, you hold it. It's like, okay, this is what I'm doing. So then that reduces the getting really angry, because you've already decided this is how I'm going to do this. This is what I'm doing. For me, I'm not leaving. I'm not flying. I'm not going out of the country. I'm not doing any of that, because eventually it will change. And there is nothing that I need to do outside of the country personally, that bad that I need to go. So that's the assessment that one has to make, for ourselves. There's a couple of people that I know of that had gone to Jamaica recently, and they stayed out after curfew. Two different people that don't know each other, and they both got arrested for being out after curfew. So for me, it's kind of like, I don't really need to go anywhere out of the country at this time that much. I just don't. If I can't drive there right now, and again, I drove that 17 hours to Colorado. But since I like to drive, it was fine for me. So that's the other side of things for me, though. Since I'm okay with driving, I don't mind driving. I'll do that. So you have to make some decisions. If it's vacation, do you really, really need to go, like, do all that to go away for vacation to another country? Those are things that you have to assess. This is all on the 3D level too.
It's very interesting though, how we've been made as a society, and with good reason, to really value travel, right? Like my grandmother was a travel agent. My dad likes to travel. Like they both went on 3 or 4 international trips like a year. And like, there's an interesting, it's a really cool.
I love traveling.
I love it. Right.
I love it.
But I also think I know so many people, right, at this point who might be anti the thing, but they're like, but I want to travel. And so right. And so that's been like a major carrot that
I've heard that too.
Has been able to be dangled And, if you just sit back and think about it for a second, all of these places that people like to travel to rely on tourist dollars, right?
Mhm.
So no matter what, it's going to be less people traveling under these circumstances than there were before. And eventually that's not going to work for them anymore, and that it's going to change, right?
That's it, retaliating.
And then the other thing is, all of this traveling around that we've been doing in airplanes, international travel, on tours where our experience of places has been guided by certain things, have really robbed us of like the unique individual inner mind travel, right? Kind of thing. And also, when you do go someplace that's far away, whether it's an hour away or on the other side of the world, like to me, the best experiences I ever have, or like when you wind up somewhere you've never been, you don't know where you are,
Right.
wander around, and you're not told what you're looking at, you're not told where you're supposed to go, you're not told where the tourists like to be, right? This whole thing is like a further, a lot of people now when they go to travel, they're like, well, they want to go on this particular tour or stay at this particular place because they know it's been checked for safety, for this, for that. I'm like, this is the sanitization of the understanding of reality, right? Because all of these places that we go, and all someone has to do is pull back on Google Map and look at what the ground looks like. These grooves in the ground are very similar to the grooves in our mind and the pathways and whatnot, right? And it's like literally like everything's being reduced down to like a few major throughways, right? Kind of thing. And, in some ways, I mean, for me, I don't know, I'm sure for you, just because I know you, all of the most fantastic travel I've ever had is in my own mind.
Yeah, it's a little scary up there, but yeah.
Right? Like I have not had any place. I've been to some fabulous places in the world, right? But you're with other people, and that's a magical experience in and of itself. But the place that you go within your own mind, where it's really just sort of you awash in whatever that field of information, energy, whatever is, like there's actually nothing like that. And I think the opportunity that this period of time provides for that, right? And getting to like explore that landscape, like I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, to retreat from all
Right. And it depends on who you are too with that, because for some people, spending that much time with their minds, with themselves, if you have, issues with depression and certain things, for some people it's not because we also have to remember that we're used to being distracted away from that kind of consistent and long-term internal connection. We're used to things just distracting us, so we don't have to deal with that. And so that's why putting somebody in solitary confinement and these things can be so traumatic for them. Like that one guy says, the mind is like a bad neighborhood and nobody wants to go there alone. So yeah, so your mind can really take you places. Now, I think that it's a good start for somebody to sit down and take it a little piece at a time in approaching themselves, because that's what they're doing. They are finally going to meet themselves. You're talking about entering the mind. You're going to be finally introduced to yourself, and you just gotta take it in stages by asking that one core question I just said before: who am I? That will gradually unravel many different levels, and you get to see the journey you've taken. You get to see the choices you've made. You get to see some of the reasons why you made the choices. Again, we're not doing blame game. This is not you getting into your mind so you can blame yourself. You get to see, and then this way you can start making some decisions as to maybe what you could change about yourself. So this time does provide people with that opportunity to prepare themselves in a way for the other side of this, because there's going to be the other side of this that will ultimately come. And who are you on the other side? Are you going to be what's been constructed by the system? or are you going to be able to see the system, operate in it, but from a more authentic version of yourself and not this automated self? That's what the system is relying on. The system is relying on the automated version of people. This is one of the things we're going to talk about in the workshop, but it's going to rely on the automated self in being able to, regulate what we do. And that's what runs. It's the automated self. The automated self is all about survival. That's why people are so triggered. That's why everybody's so scared. They don't know how long can this go on. That's not your more expansive version of yourself. That's the automated system that really does a lot of the operating and experiencing here in this life, in this reality. So I think that those are things that are really important for people to recognize. Who exactly is running around scared right now? What aspect of me is really in fear right now? In order to pull, to align yourself, to pull yourself back into some sort of balance.
So you have a workshop coming up, and that was sort of the genesis of why I reached out to you for this conversation now, right? And when I saw the invite to that, I'm like, oh, this is really good and really timely. And, it was basically, it's the understanding consciousness in the global system, the matrix of a country, state, city, or town, a game of founders, governments, rules, contracts, and agreements, and where do you fit in? So I want to start to sort of play with some of this, and I'm going to kind of hit on one thing here, and then when we move into the patrons hour, we'll get into something else. But one of the things that we've talked about before, but is particularly pertinent now, is this conversation is coming up a lot again, even with people who I would never have thought it would, about sovereignty, right? And there's a very holistic type of sovereignty, and there's an inner sovereignty and whatnot. And then there's this sovereignty sort of from the state that involves all sorts of paperwork and correcting statuses and whatnot. And I know that that's a world that you were deeply enmeshed in a long time ago. And we're sort of in a cycle of similarity right now, where that topic is becoming popular again. And just like all of the other sort of programs and technologies, it's actually become a little more streamlined than it used to be, which I think is making it more attractive to more people. And I understand sometimes going through the process of recognizing that there's been a game or a system afoot that you weren't aware of. And then once you become aware of it, sort of reasserting your position or your stance in said game. But I also know that paperwork and documentation and all of this kind of stuff is one of the main things that this system relies on to run its programs. And how when we sort of engage in that same activity, even if we think we're doing it to separate ourselves from that or whatnot, oftentimes we're just actually it's kind of what's that form of martial art that likes when you resist against it because it gives something. I think it's jujitsu, right, or whatnot. It gives something to sort of work with. It's like the rope-a-dope, right?
Right.
The dope, theory in boxing or whatever, right, kind of thing. So I think that's part of what your workshop is going to bounce off of. Do you want to talk about this a little bit? And because I see people being attracted to that again. And on the one hand, it's good. People are recognizing that there's a sovereignty issue going on in reality. But on the other hand, sometimes the way that translates into what kind of actions that they're going to take, become a little bit, either misguided or disoriented or whatnot. You have a lot of experience with this. So.
Yeah. And I think for me, when I stepped into that whole sovereignty arena, and this was in the 90s, I was coming into deeper levels of awareness of this game system, of reality as this game construct, and also on the third dimensional level, how I was incorporated into the said matrix, 3D matrix. And that's where that's what really triggered me. And then I, of course, became quite educated on how this works, and the paperwork filing and banking and money. And the more you got to understand about this, is the more you thought, oh, this is just preposterous. I got to get out of here. I got to get out of this. And so that's where the idea comes from for a lot of people. They're trying to escape. That's the word a lot of people use. How can I escape the matrix? How can I get out of the matrix? And what I discovered later on, as I grew, because you have to allow yourself to grow. This is the other part that happens, Emily. A lot of times people get so tunnel vision with this whole sovereignty idea and just wanting to get out, that they don't really give themselves an opportunity to really grow internally, because they're so focused now on the 3D thing, that they don't allow the growth to take place, to be able to see, wait a second, I just actually moved from one list onto another list. That's really all that happens. You just move from one list to another list. And certainly, you find yourself in either some perks or more combat. Usually it's just a lot more confrontation that's involved in doing all of that. And the law, and the fact that the system, what do you call it? Peace officers, or the police officers, or all of that system, law enforcement, is not educated on what you're doing. So you run into a lot of conflict, a lot of issues. People get arrested, so many things happen. And then you have to stop and ask yourself, is this really what I want to do? Or is there another way around this? Is there another way to operate, to engage with this? And so for me, that was one of the things that I started to realize, because yes, I got familiar. I've filed, paperwork. I've done that kind of stuff, Secretary of State, UCC filings. A lot. Now, there's some that will say that they have fine-tuned it. And they fine-tuned it, and as you said, streamlined it to make it easier. But I'm telling you, in the end, you still have to grapple with the thing, that part that is the most significant part, and it's yourself. I've gone to common law court. I used to go there quite a number of times, quite a bit. And I just see so many people broken down. They might know what they're talking about, but they're in ill health. They're not in good condition, yet they have stacks of papers. I think we talked about this on the show before, but they have stacks of papers filing. Now, were they stopping to really examine their true sovereignty? Their body is suffering. Their body is not at all sovereign at this point. It's, so you have to stop, and you have to begin to look at, does this really still take me to where I want to go, spiritually, or as far as consciousness, as far as your awareness, as far as the evolution of your body, just the overall expansion of you as a being beyond this construct. Because this filing the papers is not going to take you to these spaces that you want to enter. It's just not going to do that. So to me, those were the things that eventually I started to look at. Now, is the education great? I think it's really good to understand these things. I think it's fine to understand it, because it starts to give you a deeper picture as to what you're actually dealing with, how your mind is probably all wired into some construct, like I like to call it some artificial construct, even though that's a relative term, because everything is artificial. It's, it's real and it's not. But to be able to really, hone in on these things for yourself, to me, yes, you use it as data to evolve yourself. And, you change your name, you can do all these things. And in the end, how is your body and your mind and your spirit? How is that? That to me became the more significant part of it. Now I have to find out, I need to understand more about this system, because your body is operating off of all that data that has been generated coming down to your genes, all this information, all of this limiting information that's there. That's the information, that's the powerful information that needs to be rewritten, recoded, decoded. It's not so much the information on paper, right? But it's the information in the actual system. The most significant technology of all of this, it's this system. And I have said this before, Emily. I think in the article that I don't know, whatever, last year, I've said it a couple of times, that even when people talk about the UFOs and abductions, which I'm not getting into that, but I don't think that people really recognize that there has to be some incredible knowledge, some things about this technology, this system. If we can unpersonalize for a minute about the body and recognize that, wait a second, this is some incredible piece of technology here, some extremely high level technology. And what is it that it can do that I don't know about? Why is everybody else, why are they all trying to dig in and find out? To me, that's something that people need to realize and understand. It's a system that wants to be unlocked, but you can't unlock it when we're all running around outside of ourselves. And to me, those are the things that I started to understand. And how do we get there, though? How do we start getting beyond these constructs? And those are lots of aspects of what I just said that's going to be in the workshop, along with, of course, giving more, details about coordinates, location, where we actually are positioned with our bodies, on this landmass, which is all very interesting, and how it's run and its founders, and what does that really mean? The network, the overall network that you have to understand.
Okay, so you just said a lot of interesting things there. And, first of all, like, if the genesis of a lot of our problems is paperwork, that can't also be the solution, right? Like, so one of the things that this system runs so much on is writing things on paper, signing their name on it, and thinking that because they did that, that actually is the thing that makes it so, right? And so then this idea that then just doing that in response, right? Like, if you've ever watched well, we'll just go back to tennis because I love to. A tennis match where they get into a boring point in the rally where, like, the players are just exchanging slices, which are like shots that don't really do much. They're like a holding shot, and they're just
right
back and forth. The pattern doesn't get broken until somebody does something that pierces through that rhythm or that routine or that way of doing things.
Good analogy.
So, while I completely agree with you, understanding the systems that all of this stuff is based on is super duper important. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit in the second hour. We're going to kind of, I've been particularly, my mind has been spending a lot of time thinking about neighborhoods and neural networks and zoning and what is really going on. What is the actual Earth? What are these locations that we live on, that we live in, that we set our businesses or our social lives up on, or whatnot? And
just our bodies.
Right. What is actually going on? But so I think understanding all of this stuff is one thing, because then you can, sort of, choose your position and whatnot. But to just, get into an endless, rally of sliced backhands, right? kind of thing is not the way you're going to,
the system likes it.
System likes it, right? Because
system likes it because that's it's made of conflict. The system is made of conflict and war. That's what the system is made of. And again, it's not like I'm going to go, well, it's a good or bad thing. Everything about the system gives everyone an opportunity to be propelled, to move forward or not, regardless of what we think about the overall construct of the human experience. ultimately that's how it is. That's why it's so polarized, because it gives everybody an opportunity. All beings that are here have an opportunity to wake up to the game and use the game, which is what we're talking about right now, as momentum.
Yeah.
Using everything as an opportunity to go further. And this is the core thing that we must be able to look at this moment in time. Yes, we're going to get irritated with it, but how can we use it as momentum? What are the opportunities here for me to see more deeply into the game, as opposed to just looking at what they're showing you? And they're consistent with keeping it coming. They keep it coming. Billboards, the radio, the TV, they keep it coming. So people's minds are there. And then even when they navigate a little bit away to listen to something that is outside of that, it still comes back into fear. And there's a lot of people out there who are constantly still pulling people in fear. Yeah, they're giving some great information, but their work sells when they scare people. And so I'm just like, I'm not, no, I'm not up for that. I am all about freeing myself to the greatest level. And I guess we should talk about that too later too. Just a little bit about freedom, because that's the confusion. The idea of freedom has been defined for people by the system. And so folks think that they are free, but they don't know what free means. And it all ties into even the whole idea of slavery, because that's what we're dealing with at this time. It's the same system. It's just it looks different, but it has always been happening on these these various levels. And so people just need to wake up to that and take back their power. That's why the system enslaves you, so that you can snap out of it. If the system didn't do that, then they'd be just happy in it, peace and love, and everything is just you don't notice. There's nothing for you to notice that you're just trapped in a system that just cycles on and on and on till you interrupt it, which is kind of like the tennis match. Till you interrupt it, you throw a frequency in, and that brain wave changes. It's going to interrupt, maybe not for everybody, but at least for you. It's going to interrupt your position in the game. Let's just leave it at that. It's going to interrupt your position in the game.
All right, so we're going to move over into the patron section. We're going to talk about freedom. We're going to talk about where you live and how that sort of affects things, and how you can do with what you can do with those choices that you make. And also, I think Laura is going to jump in and play a little bit, because she had
I'm excited.
An experience that I struggled to understand last night and this morning, but is entertaining and insightful nonetheless. Right. But before we go over, tell people like the details about your workshop that's coming up next weekend, and how they can attend and all that jazz.
Okay, so it's coming up next weekend. It's the 18th, September 18th. Understanding Consciousness and the Global System, as Emily said, the matrix of a country, state, city, or town, a game of founders, government, rules, contracts, and agreements. Where do you fit in? And so we're going to be covering quite a number of things. Some things I've mapped out on the website. You can see, basic structure of the artificial system, talking about founders, governments, and territory as it relates to the prescribed version of reality. I mean, I'm not going to read all of it, but you can go in there and see some of what will be discussed, the projection of collective reality, and the money game and the system and how you're wired. Your death is insured. I think that's a really big one for people to really understand. Of course, yeah, it ties in with life insurance, but just in general. And is the length of your life an influenced map? Your life is by design, but by whose design? And it's all of these things that are going to be discussed, and then obviously a lot more. And I just want to say too, it says on here, I just want to say people who should attend, those with a serious interest, those seeking inner sovereignty, those who understand that this workshop is going beyond sovereignty perspectives of escaping and battling. I'm not going to go on and on, but the escape piece is really important. You have to get your mind out of escaping, because this is not about escaping. You can't escape. You can transcend the space. And that's what we need to come into, because escaping just brings you into the game, meaning that your mindset and programming is that the game has ownership over you and you're trying to escape. And escape just means that we're running from something. It doesn't mean that we have mastered it. It means that we are running. And running, that's going to be an illusion too anyway. And that's, it's filing paperwork and all of that. Yes, it does go in that same idea of running, because in the end, the system still has you. It still has you for, as they say in the Bible, yeah, well, you shall surely die. So I just needed to hack the game and figure out more and more and more beyond what the game has presented, as the protocols and construct for what reality supposedly is supposed to look like and be and experienced. And that's what all the things that I'll be sharing, and then some.
Awesome. The link for that will be in the description box below. So if you guys would like to attend, I think Laura and I will probably be there. So it would be wonderful to see some of you guys there. If you would like to catch the second half of this program, you can join us at patreon.com/offplanetmedia, or emilymoyer.locals.com. You can find Sonia at therealsoniabarrett.com. Are you still on KPFK? I haven't seen, I usually follow you on YouTube.
Yeah, I'm still on there. It's just that, they had the fund drive, and I did some repeat shows as well. So I didn't repost, but I will be, next week.
So you can also find Sonia on the Expansion Zone on KPFK. All righty. We'll see you on the other side. Bye.
Bye.